The morning sun cast long shadows across the Naval Special Warfare Command headquarters as Lieutenant Commander Sarah Chun walked through the corridor with measured steps. Her uniform was crisp, her bearing perfect, but the whispers followed her like smoke. 3 years of exemplary service, 2 Bronze Stars, and a Purple Heart meant nothing to the men who saw her as an outsider in their sacred brotherhood. "There goes the diversity hire," muttered Petty Officer First Class Jake Morrison as she passed. His voice carried just enough volume to be heard, but quiet enough to maintain plausible deniability. Sarah's jaw tightened imperceptibly, but she kept walking. She had learned long ago that reacting only gave them more ammunition. The briefing room buzzed with tension when she entered. 12 elite operators sat around the polished table, their faces ranging from openly hostile to carefully neutral. At the head sat Commander Rick Bulldog Patterson, a man whose reputation was built on breaking recruits and molding killers. His cold blue eyes fixed on Sarah as she took her assigned seat. "Gentlemen," Patterson began, deliberately excluding Sarah from his address, "we have a situation. Intelligence indicates a high-value target is operating out of a compound in the mountains of Afghanistan. This individual has been responsible for coordinating attacks that have cost American lives." He clicked a remote, and satellite images filled the screen behind him. Sarah studied the terrain with professional interest. The compound sat in a natural bowl surrounded by steep ridges, with limited approach routes and excellent defensive positions. It would require surgical precision and flawless coordination to succeed. "The mission timeline is compressed," Patterson continued. "We have a narrow window when satellite coverage and weather conditions align. The team will consist of Alpha Squad with support elements." His eyes swept the room, lingering on each face except Sarah's. "Lieutenant Commander Chun will be assigned to the dog handlers." A snicker rippled through the room. The dog pit was military slang for the K-9 unit, considered by many SEALs to be glorified babysitting duty. It was where they sent people they wanted to humiliate without technically demoting them. "Sir," Sarah said evenly, "my expertise is in tactical operations and intelligence analysis. I believe I could better serve the mission in a strategic capacity." Patterson's smile was razor-thin. "The decision has been made, Commander. You'll work with Master Sergeant Torres and his team." Dismissed. As the room emptied, Sarah remained seated for a moment, processing the deliberate slight. She had graduated top of her class from the Naval Academy, excelled in every training program, and proven herself in combat. Yet here she was, being relegated to what they considered a support role designed to keep her out of the way. Master Sergeant Miguel Torres found her in the hallway 20 minutes later. A compact man with kind eyes and weathered hands, he had spent 15 years working with military dogs. "Commander," he said quietly, "I know this wasn't your first choice, but I want you to know something. What we do isn't just handling dogs. These animals are weapons, sensors, and sometimes the difference between life and death for our teams." Sarah looked at him carefully. Unlike the others, there was no mockery in his voice, no hidden agenda. "I appreciate that, Sergeant. I'm willing to learn." Torres nodded approvingly. "Good. Come with me. I want you to meet someone special." They walked to a series of kennels behind the main building. The sound of barking filled the air, but Torres led her past the general population to a separate section. Here, in a larger enclosure, sat a German shepherd that immediately commanded attention. "This is Rex," Torres said with obvious pride. "He's not like the others. We rescued him from a facility that was, let's say, they weren't treating him well. When he came to us, he was aggressive, unpredictable. The brass wanted to put him down." The dog watched Sarah with intelligent amber eyes. There was something in its gaze that spoke of experiences beyond the ordinary, of survival earned through hardship. "What changed their minds?" Sarah asked. Torres unlocked the gate and stepped inside. Rex remained motionless but alert. "I convinced them to give me 30 days. Rex had skills, but he'd been trained wrong, punished for thinking instead of rewarded for it. He needed someone who understood that strength comes from trust, not fear." Sarah watched as Torres knelt beside the massive dog. Rex's demeanor shifted subtly, from wary vigilance to respectful attention. "He's remarkable," she said. "He is. But here's what most people don't understand about Rex." Torres met her eyes seriously. "He doesn't just follow orders. He evaluates situations and makes decisions. He saved 3 teams in the last 2 years by doing things he wasn't commanded to do." As if responding to his name, Rex stood and approached the fence where Sarah waited. She extended her hand slowly, letting him catch her scent. After a moment that felt like an eternity, he pressed his nose against her palm. "He likes you," Torres observed with surprise. "Rex doesn't warm up to people quickly. It took me 2 weeks to earn his trust." Sarah felt something shift inside her as she looked into the dog's eyes. Here was a creature that had been discarded, deemed worthless by those who couldn't see his true value. The parallel to her own situation wasn't lost on her. "Tell me about the mission requirements," she said, her voice taking on the tone of command that had served her well in previous operations. Torres outlined the details. The compound they were targeting was known to use dogs as an early warning system. The approach would require neutralizing these animals without alerting human guards. Additionally, intelligence suggested the presence of improvised explosive devices, some potentially rigged with biological triggers. Standard protocol would be to use chemical suppressants, Torres explained. But that creates its own problems. Chemical traces can be detected, and if the wind shifts, it could compromise the entire team. Sarah studied the mission photographs again, her tactical mind engaging with the problem. What if we didn't suppress the dogs? What if we communicated with them? Torres raised an eyebrow. "Explain." "Dogs are pack animals. They respond to hierarchy and authority. If Rex could establish dominance over their dogs without violence, we could potentially turn their early warning system into our advantage." It was an unconventional approach, one that would require precise timing and absolute trust between human and animal partners. Torres considered it for a long moment. "It's risky," he said finally. "Rex would be operating independently, making decisions in real time without direct human oversight. Sometimes the most effective operations are the ones that don't follow the manual," Sarah replied. She had learned that lesson the hard way during her previous deployments. Torres smiled for the first time since their conversation began. "Commander, I think you might actually understand what we do here." Over the following days, Sarah immersed herself in learning everything about K9 operations. She studied Rex's training records, observed his interactions with other handlers, and began to understand the complex communication system between human and animal partners. Rex, for his part, seemed to sense that Sarah was different from the others who had been assigned to the unit as punishment or oversight. During their training sessions, he displayed an intelligence and adaptability that impressed even Torres. "Watch this," Torres said during one session. He set up a mock scenario with hidden objects and multiple pathways. Instead of giving Rex specific commands, he simply pointed to the target area and said "clear." Rex moved through the course like flowing water, checking each potential threat location with systematic precision. When he encountered a simulated tripwire, he didn't just alert to its presence. He found an alternative route and guided Sarah around the obstacle using subtle body language. "He's not just following a search pattern," Sarah observed. "He's thinking tactically." Exactly. Rex understands mission objectives, not just individual tasks. That's what makes him special, and it's also what makes some people nervous about him. Sarah understood that sentiment all too well. In her experience, people who felt threatened by competence often responded with attempts to diminish or control it. The night before the mission departure, Sarah found herself alone with Rex in the training yard. The base was quiet except for the distant sounds of aircraft and the soft rustle of wind through the palm trees. "Tomorrow we prove ourselves," she said quietly to the dog. Rex tilted his head, studying her with those penetrating amber eyes. "They think we're both worthless, that we don't belong with the real operators." Rex moved closer, pressing his shoulder against her leg in a gesture of solidarity. In that moment, Sarah felt a connection that went beyond words or commands. They were both outsiders, both judged by standards that had nothing to do with their actual capabilities. She thought about the briefing earlier that day, where Patterson had made it clear that her role was to stay out of the way and let the real SEALs do their job. The other team leaders had nodded in agreement, their expressions ranging from indifference to barely concealed contempt. What they didn't know was that Sarah had spent hours analyzing the mission parameters, identifying potential complications, and developing contingency plans. She had noticed details in the intelligence reports that others had missed, patterns that suggested the operation might be more complex than anyone realized. But pointing out these observations would only reinforce their perception of her as someone who couldn't follow orders, who thought she was smarter than the experienced operators around her. So she had remained silent, filing away her concerns and preparing for whatever challenges lay ahead. Rex seemed to sense her thoughts. He sat beside her, alert and ready, a living reminder that worth wasn't determined by others' opinions, but by actions when they mattered most. The stars wheeled overhead as Sarah made a silent promise to both herself and her four-legged partner. Tomorrow, they would show everyone exactly what the dog pit was capable of. They would prove that being underestimated was sometimes the greatest advantage of all. As she walked back to her quarters, Sarah felt a familiar sensation in her chest. It was the same feeling she had experienced before every successful mission in her career. The calm certainty that comes from knowing you're exactly where you need to be, with exactly the right partner, at exactly the right time. Behind her, Rex watched until she disappeared into the building, then settled into his alert rest position. Like his human partner, he understood that tomorrow would bring challenges that would test everything they had learned together. In the distance, the ocean whispered against the shore, carrying with it the promise of dawn and the opportunity to rewrite everyone's assumptions about what worthless really meant. The helicopter's rotors cut through the pre-dawn darkness as the team lifted off from the carrier deck. Sarah sat in the rear compartment with Rex secured beside her, both of them isolated from the main strike team by unspoken protocol. The other operators checked their weapons and reviewed target photos, their movements efficient and practiced. Rex remained calm despite the aircraft's vibration and noise, his training evident in every measured breath. Sarah had fitted him with specialized gear, including protective padding and a communication collar that would allow her to maintain contact even at distance. She had also made modifications to the standard equipment loadout, additions that she hoped would prove unnecessary, but suspected might be critical. Commander Patterson's voice crackled through the comm system as they approached the drop zone. Alpha Team goes in first. Bravo provides overwatch from the ridgeline. Dog handlers establish perimeter security and wait for all clear before advancing. Translation, Sarah thought to herself, stay back and try not to interfere with the real mission. The insertion went smoothly, with the strike teams rappelling into position under cover of darkness. Sarah and Rex were dropped at a secondary location, officially to provide early warning for any approaching hostiles. In reality, everyone understood it was to keep them out of the way. Sarah activated her night vision and began moving toward the target compound, Rex padding silently beside her. The terrain was more challenging than the briefing photos had suggested. Loose rock and unexpected ravines created natural choke points that could easily become kill zones. Dog 6, this is Alpha Lead. Patterson's voice came through her earpiece. Maintain position and report any movement from your sector. Copy, Alpha Lead. Dog 6 in position. But Sarah wasn't maintaining position. She was advancing through the terrain using a route she had identified during her mission planning, one that would bring her closer to the compound's perimeter. Rex moved with her, his senses alert to dangers that human equipment might miss. 20 minutes into the mission, Rex suddenly stopped, his body going rigid with attention. Sarah immediately halted, trusting the dog's instincts completely. Rex's nose worked the air currents, processing scent information with capabilities that surpassed any mechanical sensor. Two soft whines, almost inaudible. Rex was indicating multiple threats ahead. Sarah activated her thermal imaging and swept the area. At first, she saw nothing unusual. Then Rex moved 3 steps to the left and sat his trained signal for explosive devices. Sarah adjusted her viewing angle and spotted the heat signature of recently buried metal, almost invisible against the cooling ground. An improvised explosive device, positioned exactly where the planned approach route would take the Alpha team. Sarah's mind raced through the tactical implications. The IED wasn't marked on any intelligence report. Either their information was incomplete or someone had planted additional devices after the last reconnaissance sweep. She keyed her radio, but hesitated before speaking. Warning about the device would mean admitting she had moved beyond her assigned position. It would also require explaining how she had detected something that the advanced surveillance equipment had missed. Rex solved her dilemma by moving forward again, his body language indicating more threats ahead. Sarah followed, trusting his senses to guide her through what was apparently a more complex defensive network than anyone had anticipated. Over the next 10 minutes, Rex identified 3 more explosive devices and 2 concealed fighting positions. The pattern that emerged painted a picture far different from the intelligence briefing. This wasn't a simple compound with basic defenses. It was a carefully prepared killing ground designed to channel attackers into predetermined zones. Sarah's radio crackled with urgent transmissions from the Alpha team. Contact front. We have movement in the compound. Alpha lead, this is Bravo. I count at least 6 tangos moving to defensive positions. Where the hell did they come from? Intelligence said minimal security. Sarah listened to the tactical situation deteriorating and realized that Rex had led her to a position that provided a clear view of what the strike teams were facing. From her vantage point, she could see the compound's actual layout, including defensive positions that hadn't appeared in the satellite imagery. The target building wasn't just a command center. It was the hub of a much larger network, with underground tunnels connecting to fighting positions scattered throughout the surrounding terrain. The enemy wasn't surprised by the attack. They had been waiting for it. Alpha lead were taking fire from multiple directions, requesting immediate support. Sarah made a decision that would either save the mission or end her career. Alpha lead, this is Dog 6. I have eyes on your situation. You're advancing into a prepared ambush. Multiple fighting positions connected by tunnel network. Dog 6, what's your position? You are ordered to maintain perimeter security. Alpha lead, my current position provides overwatch at your route. Recommend immediate withdrawal to Rally Point Beta. There was a pause filled with gunfire and shouted commands. Then, Patterson's voice, tight with anger and desperation. Dog 6, if you have actionable intelligence, transmit it now. Sarah quickly outlined what Rex had discovered, including the locations of the explosive devices and the tunnel entrances she had identified. As she spoke, she could hear the tactical situation stabilizing as the Alpha team adjusted their approach based on her information. How did you identify targets that our surveillance missed? Patterson demanded. Sarah looked down at Rex, who was still scanning their surroundings with professional alertness. My partner has capabilities that complement our electronic systems, sir. What she didn't say was that Rex had done more than identify threats. He had been reading the tactical situation at a level that matched or exceeded human analysis. When he had stopped at each IED location, he hadn't just been alerting to explosives. He had been showing her the enemy's defensive plan, piece by piece. The compound assault continued for another 40 minutes, with Sarah and Rex providing real-time intelligence updates that allowed the strike teams to navigate the defensive network successfully. Instead of walking into a trap, the SEALs were able to use the tunnel system against the defenders, turning their prepared positions into isolated strong points that could be reduced individually. When the objective was secured and the high-value target captured, Sarah found herself summoned to the command post that had been established in the compound's main building. The other team leaders were already there, their faces showing the strain of an operation that had gone very differently from the plan. Commander Patterson studied her with an expression that was difficult to read. Combat had a way of clarifying what really mattered, and Sarah could see him processing the gap between his assumptions about her capabilities and what had actually happened during the mission. Explain to me, he said slowly, how a dog handler and her animal identified a defensive network that our intelligence specialists missed. Sarah chose her words carefully. Rex is trained to detect more than just explosives or drugs, sir. He reads environmental patterns, stress markers, and territorial indicators that might not be apparent to human observation. That's not in any training manual I've read. No, sir. Rex's capabilities are somewhat unique. Master Sergeant Torres spoke up from the corner of the room. Sir, Commander Chun has been working with Rex to develop enhanced tactical applications. What you saw tonight is the result of weeks of specialized training. Sarah shot Torres a grateful look. He was giving her cover for innovations that had stretched far beyond standard protocols. Patterson walked to the window and looked out at the compound courtyard where the capture materials were being processed. The intelligence we gathered tonight suggests this network was planning a major attack on coalition forces. If we had walked into their ambush as planned, we would have lost people. He turned back to face Sarah. Your unauthorized advancement into the operational area violated direct orders. Under normal circumstances, that would result in disciplinary action. Sarah felt her stomach tighten, but she maintained her composure. Understand, sir. However, Patterson continued, your tactical intelligence prevented what could have been a catastrophic engagement. The mission succeeded because you and your partner provided capabilities that our planning hadn't accounted for. The room fell silent except for the distant sounds of equipment being loaded for extraction. Sarah realized that this moment would define not just her immediate future, but possibly the trajectory of her entire career. Patterson made his decision. Commander Chun, you and Rex will be transferring to a new assignment. There's a joint task force being formed to address high-priority targets that require specialized capabilities. They've been asking for operatives who can think outside conventional parameters. Sarah felt a surge of surprise and hope. Sir, you'll be briefed when we return to base. But I will say this. Patterson's expression became serious. Tonight you proved that there's more to effective operations than following standard procedures. Sometimes the most valuable assets are the ones that other people overlook. As the team prepared for extraction, Sarah found herself standing beside Rex in the compound courtyard. The dog watched the activity around them with calm interest, seemingly unaffected by the recognition of his contribution to the mission's success. Torres approached them, carrying a folder of paperwork. Congratulations, he said quietly. You've both earned something that doesn't come easy in this business. What's that? Sarah asked. Respect. The kind that's based on what you can do, not what people think you should be able to do. Sarah looked around at the other team members as they conducted post-mission procedures. The hostility and mockery that had defined her interactions with them seemed to have evaporated, replaced by the professional acknowledgement that comes when someone proves their worth under pressure. Rex pressed against her leg, his way of indicating readiness to move. Sarah realized that neither of them needed the validation of others to know their value, but earning it opened doors to missions where their unique capabilities could make a real difference. As the helicopters arrived for extraction, Sarah felt a deep sense of satisfaction. They had been assigned to the dog pit as a form of professional exile, but they had turned that exile into an opportunity to develop something unprecedented. The other operators might never fully understand what Rex was capable of, but they no longer questioned whether he and Sarah belonged on the team. Sometimes that was enough to change everything. 6 weeks after the compound mission, Sarah found herself in a classified briefing room at Joint Special Operations Command Headquarters. The walls were lined with maps marking locations across 3 continents, and the men and women gathered around the conference table represented the elite of military intelligence and special operations. Rex lay quietly beside her chair, his presence now accepted without question by the other attendees. Word of their success in Afghanistan had spread through the special operations community, creating opportunities that Sarah had never imagined possible. Colonel James Morrison, a lean man with silver hair and sharp eyes, stood at the front of the room. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a situation that requires unconventional solutions. 3 weeks ago, we lost contact with a deep cover asset operating in Southeast Asia. Standard recovery protocols have failed, and we believe the operative may be held in a location that presents unique tactical challenges. The screen behind him displayed satellite imagery of a remote island facility surrounded by dense jungle and natural barriers. The target is a private compound belonging to Viktor Kozlov, a former Spetsnaz operative who now operates as a broker for high-value intelligence. Our asset was attempting to acquire information about planned attacks on European targets. Sarah studied the imagery with professional interest. The compound was isolated but sophisticated, with multiple layers of security that would make conventional assault extremely difficult. Intelligence suggests that Kozlov uses animals as part of his security network. Morrison continued. Not just guard dogs, but exotic species trained to detect and track human presence. Traditional surveillance methods have proven ineffective, and standard infiltration techniques have resulted in the loss of 2 reconnaissance teams. The colonel's eyes found Sarah's across the room. Commander Chun, your recent success in Afghanistan has brought your methods to our attention. We believe this mission might benefit from your specialized approach. Sarah felt the familiar stirring of professional challenge. What specific intelligence do we have about the animal-based security measures, sir? A woman at the far end of the table spoke up. Dr. Elena Vasquez was a behavioral specialist who had been consulted on previous operations involving unconventional threats. Kozlov apparently has a background in exotic animal training dating back to his military service. Reports suggest he's using a combination of traditional guard dogs, primates trained for surveillance, and possibly other species adapted for specific defensive roles. Sarah's mind immediately began working through the implications. Traditional approaches to animal-based security focused on neutralizing or avoiding the animals entirely. But Rex had taught her that communication and understanding often provided more elegant solutions than force. "What's the timeline for this operation?" she asked. Morrison's expression became grave. "Our asset has been missing for 3 weeks. We estimate he has perhaps another week before his cover becomes completely untenable. After that point, we'll be looking at a recovery operation rather than a rescue mission." Sarah understood the distinction. A rescue meant bringing someone home alive. A recovery meant bringing someone home. Over the following days, Sarah immersed herself in everything available about Kozlov's background and methods. What emerged was a picture of someone who combined military precision with an unusual understanding of animal psychology. His facility wasn't just guarded by animals. It was designed around their capabilities. Rex seemed to sense the importance of their preparation. During training sessions, he displayed an intensity and focus that impressed even Sarah. When she introduced him to scenarios involving multiple animal species, he adapted his responses with remarkable flexibility. "He's not just learning commands," Torres observed during one session. "He's developing strategies for interspecies communication." Sarah watched Rex work through a complex scenario involving simulated encounters with different types of animals. His approach varied depending on the species he was meant to interact with, adjusting his body language and vocal signals in ways that demonstrated genuine understanding of animal behavior. Rex understands that different animals respond to different types of authority, Sarah explained to the mission planners. Dogs respond to pack hierarchy. Primates respond to social positioning. If we can establish the right kind of communication, we might be able to move through their security network without triggering alerts. The concept was revolutionary enough to make some of the traditional operators uncomfortable. The idea that an infiltration could succeed through communication rather than stealth or force challenged fundamental assumptions about military operations. Dr. Vasquez provided crucial support for the mission planning. Her research into Kozlov's background had revealed details about his training methods and the specific species he was known to work with. "He's using Capuchin monkeys for perimeter surveillance," she explained. "They're intelligent, trainable, and naturally suspicious of unfamiliar humans. But they're also highly social and responsive to proper behavioral cues. Sarah studied videos of Capuchin behavior, learning to recognize their communication patterns and social signals. Rex watched the videos with her, his head tilted in concentration as he processed the visual and auditory information. The mission plan that emerged was unlike anything in the Special Operations Playbook. Instead of avoiding or neutralizing the animal security network, Sarah and Rex would attempt to integrate with it temporarily, moving through the compound by establishing temporary social connections with the various species they encountered. Commander Patterson, who had been assigned as mission overseer, expressed his concerns during the final briefing. This operation depends entirely on assumptions about animal behavior that we can't verify in advance. If your approach fails, you'll be trapped in a hostile facility with no backup plan. Sarah met his gaze steadily. Sir, every special operation depends on assumptions that can't be fully verified in advance. The question is whether our assumptions are based on solid intelligence and proven capabilities. She gestured toward Rex, who sat alertly beside her. Rex has demonstrated the ability to establish communication with hostile animals under combat conditions. The Afghanistan mission proved that his capabilities extend far beyond standard K-9 operations. Patterson studied the mission parameters one final time. Commander, I want to be clear about something. This operation is entirely voluntary. The risks are significant, and the techniques you're proposing have never been tested under these conditions. Sarah considered her response carefully. Sir, every advancement in special operations has required someone to test new techniques under real-world conditions. Rex, and I believe we can succeed where conventional methods have failed. The insertion was scheduled for the following night, using a submarine approach that would allow them to reach the island undetected. Sarah spent her final preparation hours with Rex, running through communication drills and emergency procedures. As they worked together in the quiet training facility, Sarah reflected on how much had changed since that first day in the dog pit. What had been intended as professional exile had become the foundation for capabilities that were now considered essential to high-priority missions. Rex seemed to understand the significance of what lay ahead. His demeanor was calm, but intensely focused, the bearing of a professional preparing for work that would test everything he had learned. Tomorrow we find out if we're really as good as we think we are, Sarah told him quietly. Rex looked up at her with those intelligent amber eyes, and she saw something that went beyond training or conditioning. She saw partnership, the kind that emerges when two individuals recognize that their combined capabilities exceed what either could accomplish alone. The mission would require them to move through a security network designed by someone who understood animals at a level that matched their own expertise. They would be operating in hostile territory with no backup and no margin for error. But Sarah felt the same calm certainty that had sustained her through every successful operation of her career. She and Rex had proven themselves under conditions that others had considered impossible. Tomorrow would simply be another opportunity to demonstrate what the worthless members of the team could accomplish when given the chance to show their true capabilities. As she secured her gear for the morning departure, Sarah realized that she was no longer fighting for acceptance or recognition. She was fighting for the success of missions that mattered, using abilities that had been forged through adversity and refined through partnership with the most remarkable animal she had ever known. The submarine would arrive at the insertion point in 18 hours. By this time tomorrow, they would either have rescued their missing asset or proven that some challenges were beyond even their unconventional methods. Either way, they would face it together, as they had learned to face everything that others considered impossible. The submarine USS Hampton surfaced in the dark waters 3 miles from Kozlov's Island at 0200 hours. Sarah and Rex emerged from the torpedo room into the humid night air of the South China Sea, their specialized equipment sealed in waterproof containers designed for amphibious operations. The inflatable boat that would carry them to the insertion point rode low in the gentle swells, its electric motor providing silent propulsion toward the darkened coastline. Sarah checked her gear one final time, including the enhanced communication equipment that would allow her to maintain contact with Rex even if they became separated. Rex sat calmly in the bow, his body adapted to the boat's motion through training and experience. His gear included protective padding and a specially designed harness that would allow him to operate in multiple environments without restricting his natural abilities. As they approached the beach, Sarah activated her night vision and began scanning for signs of the perimeter security they expected to encounter. The intelligence briefings had suggested that Kozlov's outermost defenses relied primarily on electronic surveillance, but she knew better than to assume their information was complete. Rex's behavior changed as they drew closer to shore. His nose worked the air currents, processing scent information that provided details about what lay ahead. Too short, soft whines indicated the presence of animals in the immediate area, but his body language suggested they were not immediately threatening. The beach landing was silent and smooth. Sarah secured the boat in a position that would allow for rapid extraction if necessary, then began moving inland with Rex padding beside her. The jungle was dense, but navigable, with game trails that provided natural corridors through the vegetation. Within minutes, Rex alerted to their first contact. Ahead in the darkness, Sarah could make out the heat signatures of two large dogs patrolling a perimeter route. Standard protocol would have been to neutralize them quietly, but that approach would eventually be discovered and could compromise the entire mission. Instead, Sarah allowed Rex to move forward slowly, his posture and movement demonstrating the canine equivalent of diplomatic approach. The guard dogs detected his presence immediately, but their response was curious rather than aggressive. What followed was a complex interaction that Sarah had observed during training, but never under operational conditions. Rex established himself as neither threat nor intruder, but as a temporary presence that posed no challenge to the existing pack structure. The exchange involved subtle body language, scent communication, and what could only be described as negotiation. After several tense minutes, the guard dogs returned to their patrol route, apparently satisfied that Rex represented no threat to their territory. Sarah and Rex were able to pass through the perimeter without triggering any alarms or disrupting the existing security patterns. The technique worked because it respected the animal's natural behavior patterns rather than trying to overcome them through force or deception. Rex had essentially convinced the guard dogs that he and Sarah were authorized to be in the area, at least temporarily. As they moved deeper into the compound, they encountered the Capuchin monkeys that Dr. Vasquez had described. These animals posed a different challenge because their intelligence and social complexity made them more difficult to deceive or distract. Rex's approach with the primates was markedly different from his interaction with the dogs. Instead of establishing dominance or neutrality, he projected what Sarah could only describe as respectful curiosity. The monkeys observed them from the trees, but showed no signs of agitation or alarm calling that would alert human guards. Sarah began to understand that Rex wasn't just communicating with individual animals. He was reading and adapting to the social environment that Kozlov had created, moving through it like someone who understood the unwritten rules of a complex community. They reached the main compound building after 40 minutes of careful movement through multiple security layers. Sarah's thermal imaging revealed human guards at key positions, but their attention seemed focused outward rather than on monitoring the animal network. The missing asset was most likely being held in the building's lower level, according to intelligence reports. Reaching him would require penetrating the most heavily defended part of the facility without triggering responses that would bring the entire security force down on them. Rex led her to a service entrance that appeared to be unguarded except for two more Capuchin monkeys perched on a nearby structure. As they approached, Sarah noticed something that made her pause. The monkeys weren't just observing them. They were communicating with each other in a pattern that seemed almost like reporting. She realized that Kozlov's security network was more sophisticated than anyone had suspected. The animals weren't just random guards. They were part of an integrated system where different species provided different types of intelligence to human coordinators. Rex seemed to reach the same conclusion. His approach to the entrance became even more careful, his movements designed to convey routine maintenance activity rather than infiltration. When one of the monkeys began what looked like an alert call, Rex responded with a soft vocalization that somehow convinced the animal to remain quiet. The entrance led to a corridor that branched toward different sections of the building. Sarah's mission briefing had provided basic floor plans, but the reality was more complex than the diagram suggested. Multiple levels, connecting passages, and what appeared to be holding areas that weren't marked on any intelligence report. They moved through the lower levels systematically, with Rex using his enhanced senses to identify areas where humans might be confined. His training in search and rescue allowed him to distinguish between the scents of guards and potential prisoners. 20 minutes into their search, Rex alerted to a specific door that appeared to be reinforced beyond the others in the area. Sarah's electronic scanner confirmed the presence of multiple locks and what appeared to be surveillance equipment. The challenge was that bypassing the security would take time, and they were operating in the heart of hostile territory with limited options for escape if discovered. Sarah made the decision to trust Rex's assessment and began working on the door mechanisms. As she worked, Rex maintained watch for approaching guards while simultaneously monitoring the animal network that extended throughout the facility. His ability to process multiple sources of sensory information allowed him to provide early warning that electronic surveillance might miss. The door opened to reveal a small cell where a man in civilian clothes sat against the far wall. He looked up as they entered, his expression shifting from resignation to hope as he recognized Sarah's military bearing. "Agent Blackwood?" Sarah asked quietly. "Yes. How did you find me?" "The security here is supposed to be impenetrable." Sarah helped him to his feet, noting that he appeared to be uninjured, but weakened by his captivity. "We'll discuss that later. Right now we need to move quickly and quietly." As they prepared to leave the cell, Rex suddenly went rigid with attention. His warning came just seconds before Sarah heard the sound of approaching footsteps in the corridor outside. 3 guards were moving toward their position, apparently conducting a routine security check. Sarah realized that they had perhaps 30 seconds before discovery, and the route they had used to reach the cell would take them directly into the path of the guards. Rex moved to the cell doorway and studied the situation with intense concentration. Then, he made a decision that demonstrated the full extent of his tactical intelligence. Instead of alerting to the approaching threat, he moved back towards Sarah and guided her to a ventilation grate that she hadn't noticed in the cell wall. The grate was large enough for human passage, and Rex's behavior indicated that it connected to a route that would avoid the guards entirely. Sarah quickly removed the grate covering and helped Blackwood into the opening. As they crawled through the ventilation system with Rex leading the way, Sarah realized that he had somehow mapped the entire building's layout during their approach, identifying alternative routes that didn't appear on any blueprint or intelligence report. They emerged from the ventilation system in a storage area that connected to the building's rear exit. From there, Rex guided them through the compound using a route that avoided both human guards and animal observation posts. The extraction from the island went smoothly, with the submarine pickup occurring exactly as planned. As they cleared the territorial waters and headed toward the rendezvous point, Sarah found herself reflecting on what they had accomplished. Agent Blackwood provided a debriefing that revealed the true scope of Kozlov's operation. "He's not just selling intelligence," Blackwood explained. "He's developing methods for using animals in ways that could revolutionize security and surveillance. What you encountered tonight is just the beginning of what he's capable of." Sarah looked at Rex, who was resting quietly beside her in the submarine's cramped quarters. The dog had not only succeeded in navigating Kozlov's animal security network, he had demonstrated capabilities that went far beyond anything in the official training manuals. Commander Patterson's voice came through the communication system as they approached the base. "Outstanding work, Commander Chun. Mission accomplished with 0 casualties and valuable intelligence recovered." Sarah acknowledged the commendation, but her mind was already working on the implications of what they had learned. If Kozlov was developing advanced animal-based security systems, Other hostile actors would likely follow suit. The techniques that she and Rex had pioneered would become essential capabilities for future operations. More importantly, they had proven that the partnership between human and animal operatives could achieve results that neither could accomplish independently. Rex wasn't just a highly trained dog. He was a tactical partner whose intelligence and adaptability made him invaluable for missions that required unconventional solutions. As the submarine carried them toward home, Sarah realized that their success had opened doors to challenges that would test the limits of what they thought possible. But she felt ready for whatever lay ahead, knowing that she had the best possible partner for missions that others would consider impossible. 1 year later, Sarah stood before a joint session of military leadership at the Pentagon, delivering a briefing that would reshape how special operations approached unconventional threats. The conference room was filled with generals, admirals, and intelligence officials who had come to hear about the program that had emerged from what was once considered the dog pit. Rex sat beside the podium, wearing a collar that bore decorations recognizing his service in 12 successful operations across 4 continents. His presence in the most secure briefing room in the Pentagon would have been unthinkable 18 months earlier, but his record of accomplishments had earned him acceptance at the highest levels of military command. The Enhanced Animal Partnership Program has achieved results that exceed our most optimistic projections, Sarah reported to the assembled officers. Teams operating under this protocol have succeeded in missions where conventional approaches failed, with 0 operational casualties and intelligence recovery rates approaching 90%. The slides behind her showed mission summaries from operations in environments ranging from urban counterterrorism to remote facility penetration. Each success story represented situations where the unique capabilities of human-animal partnerships had provided solutions that traditional methods couldn't achieve. General Patricia Hayes, the Joint Chiefs Representative for Special Operations, asked the question that Sarah had been expecting. Commander Chun, what makes these partnerships more effective than existing K-9 programs? Sarah had prepared carefully for this moment. Ma'am, traditional military working dogs are trained to follow specific commands and execute predetermined tasks. The animals in our program are developed as tactical partners who can analyze situations and make independent decisions that support mission objectives. She clicked to the next slide, which showed video footage from the Kozlov compound operation. Rex didn't just help us navigate the security network. He mapped the facility's layout, identified alternative routes, and adapted his communication strategies to work with different animal species, all while maintaining operational security. Admiral Robert Chun, no relation despite the shared surname, leaned forward in his chair. Are you suggesting that these animals possess tactical intelligence comparable to human operators? Not comparable, sir. Complementary. Rex processes sensory information and environmental patterns that human operators might miss, while I provide strategic analysis and mission planning that guides his tactical responses. The combination produces capabilities that neither human nor animal could achieve independently. The briefing continued with detailed analysis of operational successes, cost-effectiveness comparisons, and recommendations for program expansion. But Sarah knew that the real validation of their work lay not in statistics or efficiency reports, but in the lives that had been saved through missions that would have failed under conventional approaches. After the formal presentation, General Hayes approached Sarah privately. Commander, there's something I want to discuss with you. We've received a request for assistance with a situation that may require your specialized capabilities. Sarah listened as the general outlined a developing crisis in Eastern Europe, where a terrorist network had established operations in an area that conventional forces couldn't access without risking civilian casualties. The terrain and security challenges suggested that traditional military responses would be inadequate. The local government has requested assistance, but they specifically asked for solutions that won't result in widespread destruction or civilian displacement, General Hayes explained. Your methods might provide the precision approach that this situation requires. Sarah felt the familiar stirring of professional challenge, but this time it was tempered by confidence earned through proven success. Ma'am, Rex, and I will be honored to support this mission. When do you need our assessment? The situation is developing rapidly. We'll need your team deployed within 72 hours. As Sarah prepared for what would become their most complex operation yet, she reflected on the journey that had brought them to this point. The worthless assignment to the dog pit had become the foundation for capabilities that were now considered essential for high-priority missions. Rex seemed to sense the importance of their new assignment. During the pre-deployment briefing, he displayed the focused alertness that Sarah had learned to recognize as his preparation for significant challenges. Master Sergeant Torres, now assigned as the program's senior trainer, provided tactical support for the mission planning. "You've built something remarkable here," he told Sarah as they reviewed the operational parameters. "Rex isn't just an exceptional individual. He's become the model for developing capabilities that we never imagined were possible." The mission itself would test everything they had learned about human-animal partnership under conditions that pushed the boundaries of what either species could accomplish alone. But Sarah felt prepared for whatever challenges lay ahead. Commander Patterson, now serving as the program's military liaison, offered his own perspective during the final briefing. 2 years ago, I thought I was assigning you to a position where you couldn't cause problems. Instead, you've created solutions for problems that we didn't even know how to approach." Sarah acknowledged the irony with a slight smile. "Sometimes the best opportunities come disguised as punishments, sir." As their transport aircraft lifted off for the deployment, Sarah looked out the window at the landscape passing below. Somewhere in that vast expanse of territory, situations were developing that would require the kind of unconventional thinking that she and Rex had learned to provide. Rex settled beside her seat with the calm confidence of a professional preparing for work that he understood and valued. His transformation from a discarded military dog to an essential partner in high-priority operations represented more than just successful training. It demonstrated that worth wasn't determined by initial assessments, but by the capabilities that emerged when potential was properly developed. The men and women who had once dismissed them as worthless now sought their expertise for missions that could shape international security. The dog pit that was supposed to isolate them from important work had become the training ground for capabilities that were revolutionizing special operations. Sarah realized that the greatest victory wasn't proving their worth to others, but discovering capabilities within themselves that exceeded what anyone had thought possible. Rex had taught her that intelligence and adaptability weren't limited to human operators, while she had shown him that partnership could amplify individual strengths into something greater than the sum of its parts. As the aircraft carried them toward their next mission, Sarah felt the deep satisfaction that comes from knowing that her work mattered, that the challenges they would face were exactly the kind that she and Rex had been developed to handle. The radio crackled with mission updates and tactical information, but Sarah's attention was focused on the partnership that had made everything possible. Rex looked up at her with those intelligent amber eyes, and she saw reflected there the same confidence and readiness that sustained her through every operation. They had been assigned to the dog pit as rejects who didn't fit the standard model of military excellence. They had emerged as pioneers of capabilities that others were now eager to emulate. The transformation had required proving themselves repeatedly under conditions where failure would have ended their careers, but each success had opened doors to missions that mattered more than recognition or advancement. Looking ahead, Sarah could see opportunities to develop their methods further, to train other human-animal partnerships that could extend these capabilities across the entire special operations community. Rex would serve not just as an operational partner, but as the foundation for programs that would reshape how military forces approach complex challenges. The future held missions that would test the limits of what they had learned, situations that would require innovations beyond what they had already developed. But Sarah felt ready for whatever lay ahead, knowing that she had the best possible partner and the confidence that comes from proven success under impossible conditions. The aircraft flew on through the night, carrying them toward challenges that would define the next chapter of their partnership, and continue to prove that those labeled as worthless often possess the greatest potential for extraordinary achievement.